I'm here with the one and only Nick Grantham in Manchester. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining me
Thanks
today.
for having me.
So, quick background, and we will get into all the stuff. So, he's currently the first team lead S&C for Newcastle.
Yep.
Been with the club for 6 years. Been the first team lead for 3. And then I could even try to list all the other things that he's been doing. Sports Science Consulting. He's been with Great Britain Basketball, Nike. If you want to read all that stuff, go to his LinkedIn. But we're here to talk about you, about soccer development, about 1080, and kind of everything in between. So we got 5 super awesome questions, saving the 1080 specifics for the very end. And wherever we go, we go. So anything else before we get started?
No, well, good. Thanks for inviting us in, and let's have a good conversation.
Fantastic. So a little foreshadow to your presentation later. We're here in Manchester for the 1080 Summit. But yeah, appreciate your time. So first one, easy one right off the bat. Let's say you're talking with a player of yours and he goes, I don't really need to train speed. Like I sprint in practice, I sprint in games. Kind of how do you handle that conversation? What would you say to a guy like that?
You said it was going to be an easy one to start with. So that's a real conversation that happens. And to an extent, they're right. They will get a maintenance dose within a training week, within a match week. So we know from all of our metrics that we collect during a training week that we will try and hit above 90% max V. We will see those sorts of numbers being hit and achieved during a game. So in one sense, yeah, they're right. They're getting a dose, probably a minimum effective dose, to maintain their current level. And this is where I would then start to have the conversation of, we know that there are year-on-year step changes in terms of the outputs required to be successful in the Premier League. So we know that high-speed distance is increasing, we know total distance is increasing, and most importantly, we know that speed, that's the game changer. So we have seen over the last 3 seasons step changes in max velocities. So the conversation I would have is, yeah, this is your current level, and in season when we've got lots of fixture congestion, lots of quick turnaround, you're right, it is going to be challenging to add additional work to your program to increase speed. But be very aware that if you're only getting in training in matches, you will maintain your current level, which is great.
Yeah.
However, the rest of the league, the rest of your colleagues and competitors are getting better and better and better. So what we need to do is, do you want to be last season's player? Do we want to be last season's team? That's a question we always ask ourselves. No, we want to be pushing. So can we find ways within the training week to kind of seamlessly integrate some additional work? And we know, again, from what I talk about in the presentation, is to improve speed, there are different ways we can go about it. We can look at strength work, we can look at plyometric type activity, we can do free sprints, we can do resisted sprints. All of those elements will improve speed components, whether that's early acceleration, max V. So, are there things we can do before, during and after training, on the field, off the field, that will make you a better athlete and will allow you, rather than just maintain, but actually push the dial on your speed. So, yeah, they're not wrong, but do they want to stand still?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good point where even if you do just maintain, well, technically you're getting worse.
Yes.
Because the average is going up.
That's it. It's a competitive league. We're in an arms race. Every team is looking for the fast players that can break and press. So again, we get to the end of every season, we always ask, do we want to be last season's team? The answer should be no. We want to be moving forward. So that's the conversation that I would have with the player.
So then, if once you get them bought into obviously I want to get a new contract, I want to keep playing better, I want to help my team, all those things, easy win, right? Mm-hmm. And then it sounds like a little bit more like a microdosed approach, right? A bunch of soccer training all the time between with the team, probably on their own because they want to obviously get better. What have been some of those microdose type things that has really clicked for the guys, whether it's results wise or whether they just really enjoy, they're kind of bought in. So certain types of drills or before, during, after, what has been the most successful, I guess, for you so far with this microdosing?
So I think the biggest thing, culturally, football hasn't had a long and strong tradition in strength and power development. So it's still a sport that's catching up with just an acceptance that the physical qualities will impact your performance qualities on field. So there's still a piece to be done there, and I think the biggest work on was just creating the culture and through normative behaviours. So the nudges every day. What can we put in place? So I talk about rituals, rhythms, which create the routine. So what are the rituals? There are ritualistic things that happen in every sport. The way you say hello, to the way you eat your breakfast. What are the routines, the things that you have to do? So our pre-training session starts at 10:30. We go into an individual, then we go into a team at 10:45, then we go out to the grass at 11. So that's our ritual. And then that creates the overall routine. So I think what we've spent a lot of time over the 6 years is creating that rhythm, ritual and routine, the normative behaviours, so that, as you say, in terms of microdosing, it's no longer, we're doing a big speed session.
It's not a separate thing. It's just part of,
So one of the things that's been a real mistake in sport is this siloed approach to training. We're going to do strength. We're going to do speed. We've got a rehab session. When I worked in track and field, it was just all training. We're going to train. It just happened that training took place on the track, took place in the gym. It was a different mindset, and I guess that's what we're trying to create in that routine of the week. Is 10:30 you come into the gym and you're doing activation, but within that activation we've got drills that are working on your projection, your ability to switch, which are going to lead to the pitch session because it's an extensive day and we're going to open you up.
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily know that they're doing discrete elements. It's just, this is what we do.
Yeah.
We go out into the grass and we hook you onto the 1080, we do 2 runs, then you join into and then we're ready to go. And within that we've got a resistance stimulus. You come off the grass, we walk into the gym, we've got our strength session. We finish the game, you come through the locker room, we know that you haven't lifted for 10 days, you're going to do some isometrics or you're going to do a lift. It just becomes a habit. So that's the biggest thing, is not making it a big deal, not kind of signposting, this is a 30-minute speed acceleration development session. Yeah. It's just the carousel we work through.
Yeah. Instead of it being this like huge grand thing, you know, just like part of the routine, you know?
Yeah. And I think I always want more. I always want more time, but I have to appreciate that, time is very constrained, particularly when you've got lots of fixtures coming through with domestic and European competitions and cup competitions. So, if we're given 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, I'll take that. And I'll take that over a 40, 50-week season as opposed to one big 30, 40-minute session that we do once every 6, 8 weeks. So, I'd much rather have just regular touch points.
Yeah, and then you're not drawing out of too much of one bucket, right?
Yeah.
So trying to do the strength, the speed, the plyos, the mechanics work, the resistance runs in like one monthly, or weekly, 2-hour block, right? 10 minutes, and then all just adds up over time. I'm a big fan of microdosing. I actually like in season better than off season.
Yeah.
Because it's so much more concise.
Yeah.
It's efficient, it's effective, we get out and we train, and it just cuts out all the fluff.
The opportunities that you get to actually move the dial significantly in terms of performance tends to be off-season, pre-season, and unfortunately during extended rehab periods. That's when we see the greatest gains with the players, because you can really get after and chase the adaptations you're looking for. Once that season starts, you need to win games. And the focus rightly so, needs to shift to the week-to-week performance. And what we're trying to do is, at best, I think, maintain. Let's be realistic. We're looking to maintain a performance.
Yeah, over a long season, that matters.
Yeah. We want to reduce. We want to mitigate the risk of dropping off in terms of performance. So hopefully that answers you.
No, that's great. That's great. I like the routines, or the rhythms, rituals, and routines.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah. Because when you sign a new player, they kind of just get swept along because it's a way of working. There's a way of doing things. Everyone moves from this area of the training ground to this area, and okay, this is where are we going? We're going to the gym. Okay, we didn't do this at my old club. Now we do it here, and I think all of those 3 things are really, really super important.
Fantastic. Well, you crushed the first one, so I'm excited for the rest of these. So next is I call it like the good to great, and fortunately as a field, if someone's stumbling upon this video on YouTube or Instagram, whatever this is, even if they're a 1080 decline or not, they probably just appreciate that next level of training.
Yeah.
We're beyond like speed can be trained. We're beyond just, people understand how to do a high-low model, right? Microdosing is not this new kind of fancy thing. So what is the difference in your opinion between a Premier League guy and someone who's like even just at the second league, right?
Yeah.
Or those guys that are super, super close. Or if you were to get a guy on day one from a new club and you watch him run, he looks pretty good, right? You watch him squat, he's at like 1.7, 1.8, 1.8, strong enough, right? He looks pretty reactive. He's like above average at most of these things. Kind of where would you go with that guy? So if you want to talk general soccer development, kind of good to great, or if you want to go specifically training guys when like they don't really have a superpower, but they're already like above average, kind of across the board.
Well, let's talk around a couple of things, and we'll probably cover both areas. I think.
Sure.
So, firstly, it's a really difficult question actually to answer succinctly because success is multifactorial. So, I think regardless of what league they're playing in, there are technical components, tactical components, physical and mental, and all of those can be worked on. That's the things that are workable, changeable. And I think regardless of the league, those players will be hopefully maxing out those capabilities. I think then how does someone end up playing the Premier League as opposed to Championship or League One, League Two? So I think what I really like is this idea of success, and it's the crossroads between preparation and opportunity. Okay, so preparation is mental skills, physical skills, technical, tactical. So you're working on those attributes that are modifiable, and then the opportunity has to present itself. Whether that's a scout comes to watch you play, whatever it is, and then if you're prepared and that opportunity presents itself, you have the chance of being successful and going into the league. So it's really hard to say why does someone play in the Prem, because I think it is that untangible. What were the opportunities that were presented to that player? Who turned up on a Saturday to watch them play? What was it that caught their eye? And were they prepared at that point to then kick on? I don't know if that answers. Sort of in general terms. I think then when you have a player, the best athletes that I've worked with across all the sports, they recognise the gaps. So actually, they recognise their superpowers. Every player will have a superpower that has got them to that point, whether that's they rely on their physicality. It might not be technically the most gifted, but they will outrun their opposition. Or they may not have the greatest engine, but they've got great game sense. They just know where to be and can filter through. So I think the really good players understand their superpowers, but I think the great athletes then recognise their gaps. What are the things where they can be beaten? So often I'll ask players, when we're doing initial needs analysis, how can you be beaten? What is it in your game or in your training that's going to find you out? Is it the fact that you can't press? Is it the fact that actually when you've got to do a recovery run, you're gassed out? How can we plug that gap? And that goes back to this idea, this concept of Liebig's law. So Liebig's law talks about, it comes from sort of agriculture and other areas where you've got the struts on a barrel and you can fill the barrel up, but if one strut is missing, you're still going to leak. So, you need to plug those gaps. So how can you be beaten? And I think the great players, they understand their superpowers, they'll work on that, they'll make themselves useful to the coach, but they'll also understand what their gaps are. And they've got that sort of growth mindset and approach that they determine to get better. They want to be better. They're not just satisfied with working and operating at a certain level. And I think that's what I've seen across all the different sports I've worked with.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that makes sense to me. I think the universe, if you will, you have to be in a spot to succeed, but when it's your time to go, that opportunity.
So when I got my first role, I used to go back and give presentations to the undergraduates at the university I graduated from, and my sort of mentor and tutor there would ask me in once a year, and I always used to talk about I was lucky to get this job. I was really lucky, and after one of the, I think it was the second year, he pulled me to one side and he said, "Well," he said, "I don't really agree with you. You might have been lucky to get the interview, but you've been doing that job now for 3 to 5 years, so you're doing something right. So like you say, the universe, the crossroads between opportunity and preparation, I think you have to be ready. And if you're ready and you seize the opportunity, if you understand what the coach needs from you, if you understand what the strength coach needs from you, and you're willing to do it, I see players that might not be technically, tactically the most gifted, but, nail their preparation, make sure that they're always ready. You might have players that are physically amazing, but no, they've got to work on an aspect of their game, so they'll spend extra time out on the grass. I think that's what separates the great from the good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that having that conversation resonates with players. It's like how many players, if they're in the second league, they're just like one injury away. Like they could hang, there's just not an opportunity yet. And I'm sure that's reassuring for sure.
I get annoyed. I used to get annoyed with people that would say things like, players in their third, I can't get faster. Why are we doing speed work with him? Can't get faster. Okay, I might not be able to turn him into a Usain Bolt, but we can make him a faster, we can make him a better version. We can make you a better version. So sure, this is the raw materials we've got, and this is what we always talk about with the coaches is when, what we're trying to do is give you a better raw material to work with on the grass. We're not saying necessarily, they might still have wooden feet and not great touch. That's not us, but we can give you a better physical specimen. I can make him slightly faster. And if by being slightly faster, he closes his opposition down a split second quicker, has more time on the ball to make a decision and lay the ball off, perfect. So I'm a massive believer. Everyone can get better, no matter where you are in your career.
Yeah, I say I can get you if you're not fast, I can't turn you into Usain Bolt, but I can make you faster than what you are right now. And especially when guys make it to that level, they've been good at something, but it's filling in those gaps or improving those gaps.
We have benchmarks across our squad, so we benchmark and we know what our sort of leaderboards are, and we do look at those. But more often we're drilling down to, I'm comparing you with you. Yeah, look, I know player X can put more power output than you, but actually look at where you've gone from. When we had you 3 years ago, you're here compared to there. There's always room to improve.
So last question on that topic. For identifying these gaps, there's kind of 3 things that I think would come to mind. One would be, are these guys self-aware enough to know it's their cardio or it's their IQ? Is it stuff that you identify, something more quantitative, like in a testing day?
Yeah.
Or is it just the coach and their intuition, and they're obviously elite at what they do, the coach just having more feel and being like, oh man, this guy just doesn't have legs at the, in minute 80, whatever. So what combination of, do the guys know their gaps? Do the numbers tell you? Or is it just convos with the soccer coach? I
think it can be all of those things and a combination of those areas. Interestingly, when we sign new players, they might come in with a reputation of max velocity or being great in the gym. And we're always like, okay, let's wait until you join our program and look at our benchmarks, and we'll decide where you are on ours. So we have our physical performance indicators that we will look for across a range of strength diagnostics and metrics, as well as pitch-based metrics. And some players might think they're amazing, and then we go, I hate to tell you this, but actually compared to what we think is amazing, you're at the lower percentile. But that's great, because that means we've got loads of room to improve. Super. So there's definitely a physical component. There are then players that are self-aware, and as you say, they'll know that they come in with, listen, I always tend to struggle with this type of work. And then again, the coaches will be on the field, and they have it's more than an intuition, but they're seeing the game every single day. They know, but sometimes what we have to do is almost the checks and measures around that. So we might get a conversation saying, actually, I think this player is slow. Okay, well, but physically our numbers are telling us that they're not slow. They've got really good pick-up and acceleration. So why? Well, they never seem to press the player. Okay, so is that a physical attribute, or is that more of a game sense, reading the game and knowing when to go? So those are then the conversations of trying to figure out which one or which combination of the three is important.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like going on a fact-finding mission and then putting all the pieces together into like, what's the truth?
Yeah.
You know, because the coach could say, oh, he's slow. It's like, well, is he actually slow, or is he just like game speed slow?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
whenever there's gaps, we like to fill it with our versions of the truth. So if I watch a game, I'll be watching it from the lens of a strength and conditioning coach, and I'll be looking at kind of raw. I'll be like, oh, that was a max V effort there. The coach will be looking at it from a different perspective. The nutritionist will be looking at it from a different perspective. So we're all watching the same game. We've all got the same map of the world, but we're just looking at it from different vantage points. So the key is, as a practitioner, I need to understand what is the coach seeing that makes him feel that the player is slow. Because what I'm seeing is he's really quick. And also the coach has to say, okay, Nick, well, why do you think he's fast? Well, because the data is saying that he's got the raw materials. So it's always, we're looking at the same thing. What's your vantage point? What's my vantage point? Let's understand.
And then how you put it all together.
Yeah,
that makes sense to me.
Yeah,
fantastic. So now we'll get into a little bit more specifics. So I want to get your experience working with Premier League players, because not everyone can get to that level, and the best of the best, right? So we can go qualitative and also quantitative. And I'll give an example of myself working with, pro football, American football guys.
Yeah.
So things that were surprising, but also not surprising. So, for example, working with NFL guys, CFL, pro American football, I was very surprised by them. The programs weren't that different. They all did very similar drills to, my 10-year-olds and my high schoolers and whatever. And they did get better, but it's kind of just the changes they made weren't super, super drastic, right? But it's no, they still just need good training. They just are more coachable. They get things quicker, right? You'll say, hey, try this, and they'll get it right away. Uh-huh. So I think just the coachability and the improvement was quicker, just not as big. So that was interesting to me. But I was not surprised by just how consistent they were, right? Their standard deviation on their weekly jump testing sprint times, it was super, super kind of narrow. So that kind of checked out to me. Or 1080 wise, testing an entire Power 4 now, if you follow American college stuff, an entire Power 4 football team on the 1080. Some of the RF maxes were a lot lower than I would have thought, you know? But the studs or the top whatever percent of guys for the V0 were just as fast as I thought they'd be. So whether it's qualitative, quantitative, kind of getting to the level of Premier League, whether it's things in your first month, kind of surprise you, or kind of looking back, you're I thought this would be maybe a little different. So kind of open-ended, but I'd be interested to hear your experience.
I think my first experience within professional football, again, it's moved on a lot over the last decade, 10, 15 years, but spoke at the start about there wasn't a culture of strength and power development. So, to walk into a professional team that's operating at the highest level in the highest league, and you suggest doing a power session on a Thursday, and everyone looks at you like you've got two heads because, oh no, we can't do that because we've got a game on Saturday, it's a -2, we're going to have heavy legs, we're going to have muscle soreness. That was a real surprise to me, because, and then, everyone's telling you constantly that these players need to recover. They're always going to be fatigued. They can't tolerate that. They can't do this session. There's too much of that. And what I've definitely found over the years, especially with my more recent time in the last 6 years, is the players' capacity to cope with training is a lot higher than we give them credit for. And it takes time to get that cultural shift of players coming through and going, do you know what? I can lift post-game. I can lift on a match day +1. I can do a speed session here. we're moving away from the answer is always no, protect, recover, to actually, to be optimal on a Saturday, you need to do this work. You need to prepare. So I think that's the big surprise, that there wasn't a lot going on. There was a lot of myths, and now finding that their capacity for work is high, and the players want it as well. That's what's really interesting now is, you always think you're going to have a battle when you say to a player, listen, I know we're playing at the weekend, but it's 12 days since you last lifted. That's within our window where we need you to get a strength stimulus. You're probably going to play 90. Can we do these 2 exercises? Yeah, no problem. Okay, Nick, I'll do that. Now, you have to handle the emotion of the game, the wins, the losses, what goes on in the game.
Yeah, have some
But
feel.
The principle is the guys are coming off the grass and they'll do what they need to do if it's approached and asked, and there's a recognition that work needs to take place now to be the best, to be constantly improving. I think then, if I reflect back on a session, we have external people come in to observe our training and look at what we're doing from other clubs, other sports. And I always think we run quite a simple program. And when you're in it, you think, this is just super simple and it's not that great. But then when others come in from other pro sports, different codes, and they see the way that the players come in, have got autonomy with what they're doing, they come in, they lift, they're like, we didn't think football players trained like this. This is a really good program. And then Paul Bryce, who's a colleague and is speaking later today, Paul came in to sense check our diagnostic metrics that we were going to use, primary and secondary metrics. And we had a training day, the lads were coming through, we get them onto the force plates and we're doing our jumps, and he's seeing power outputs that he sees with elite horizontal and vertical jumpers, triple jumpers, long jumpers, track and field, who just train like that. And he's saying, raw materials, this player has got a better watts per kilo peak power than I've seen in any of our track guys. So all of a sudden you're like, we have got some athletes here. This is kind of exciting. And I think what we've seen now over the 6 years is we've seen our benchmarks move every year. And what we used to get excited about now is the bottom centile. It's the bottom centile. We're not even looking. If it doesn't start with a 6, we're not even interested. We need 7s, 8s, 9s in front of our numbers. So that's really cool and really exciting, because I believe the players have a huge capacity to get better with additional work.
It's interesting. I was having this conversation with I think Anders last night about the question of, did they get better because of you or in spite of you?
Uh-huh.
And if someone makes it all the way to the Premier League, right? How many like games, practices, conditioning sessions, sports specific sessions, lifting, did they just like not break?
Yeah.
So I would totally believe that like probably an elite quality they have is the ability to tolerate, just training in general. But I like the auto regulation piece about, it's really just a good program set up from the start and then setting those expectations. Right?
Yeah.
So again, I really liked in-season training with my college baseball guys, and it was every 3 to 4 weeks we had to hit our under 0.5, right? Our strength stimulus. And if guys, they were a little bit banged up, it was a long road trip, whatever, on week 3, I'd be like, hey, I totally get it, but know that next week we have to. And just having that conversation, I think,
a long way. When I first came into football and other sports, often you inherit the legacy of your predecessor, and maybe they were a little bit excitable and a bit gung-ho and old school, and we're going to do this and we're going to lift and you can do more. And because in my head, I've always thought you can do more, but you have to ease yourself in, and you have to start those conversations. And that's really what we've seen now is those normative behaviours, and we get up front in a conversation. So the lads know, like, I have a minimum effective dose across the season. I know across a 40-week season, we're looking at between 51 and 70 exposures of strength, ideally, with non-international players. So what does that look like? We break it down. It's kind of every 7 to 10 days. So once we get to 10 days, we have a little alert. Okay, we're going to amber now. So once we get to 14 days, it's a big red. And we're going, we don't want to get to 14 days. We want to make sure we've got some sort of exposure, whether that's 2 heavy lifts, whether it's post-match ISOs or a match day +1. Those are the things that we're looking for. And because it becomes part of that normative behaviour, the rhythm, the ritual, the routine, the players are almost expecting it. Are we doing anything after game today? You're not, you don't need to, but we're going to get you Tuesday because we know Tuesday it's a -3, we can have a good hit. So those conversations are more natural now, whereas 4, 5, 6 years ago, we were probably viewed as the bad person.
Yeah.
Got to make me lift.
Yeah.
It's much more of a two-way street now.
Yeah, I think it's interesting seeing how it goes from that's not how we used to do it, or that's not what we do, versus like, how much is it just the old routine versus they don't know what a post-game lift actually is like. They just assume, you know?
We were talking about this with Jan this morning about we've had to reframe. So we would always just talk about strength because in our heads, we know that strength can be all different shades.
Oh, for sure.
But what we were doing, there was this assumed level of knowledge with our colleagues and our colleagues in sports science and medicine that they understood when I said we're going to do a post-match strength. It's not a 45-minute major lift.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking about 2 exercises, reduced volume, maybe isometric.
2x3, 2x4.
It's not going to leave anything on them. So now when we have conversations in our team meetings, we're kind of signposting that and saying, okay, these players are going to have a full dose session. We color code it. This is going to leave something on them, but they've got adaptations. We've got time. These ones are going to have a maintenance dose. It's going to leave a little bit, but nothing that's going to impact performance. These ones, we got to go again in 2 days. So they're just going to get a stimulus that doesn't touch the sides, but maintains and mitigates that drop off. So we've become better at articulating what we mean by strength.
Exactly, yeah. And framing it, I like phrasing it. What are we going to leave on them, right?
Yeah.
How is this going to affect? Yeah. You know, because you could say fatigue, residual, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Is it going to affect them playing soccer or not?
Yeah.
You know, that makes sense to me. So I'm sure that has gotten some light bulbs for the staff.
Yeah. Yeah. Hope so.
All right. So home stretch. We got to talk 1080. I would be remiss if we didn't get into the weeds a little bit, but I gave the general audience what they want. We talked some soccer stuff. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more later. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we could do a whole nother hour on just 1080. What have been some of your favorite things you've done, biggest light bulbs, the things that, you know, of course, like you're a good coach first and the 1080 supports that. But some of those things that like you couldn't live without, you know, or having a 1080 now makes X part of your coaching like way more efficient and effective. So the top kind of handful of things that you enjoy the most about kind of using the 1080.
So I think...
And how many years have you been on it?
So it's been in my awareness for probably 6+ years. I think the big thing for me, which I will talk about later, is this idea of technology-enabled coaching. So we're not being driven by it. We're not slaves to the numbers. But what it's doing is it's informing my practice. So I've still got a coach. I still have to make a decision on the grass whether we do an extra run or we increase the load or we change the resistance. But it enables my coaching practice. So, if I reflect back on the timeline from starting work, where it was bungee cords, elastics, we moved through into other technology that works, exogenes, run rockets, and the such. What 1080 did, and the reason I felt it was a game changer, is it's that precision. It's that precision piece that I'm not on a bungee kind of feeling how much I'm resisting. Right. Like, I can dial it in.
Every time it's the same.
It's 5 kilos. It's 5.2 kilos. It's whatever I need it to be. And then it's giving me data saying, yeah, you are above target, below target. So I think the precision and the accuracy is really useful for us. And increasingly for the athletes. The athletes we work with, they want to know their numbers. You know, we have a generation that are coming through now that are in tune with their data. They know their GPS metrics. We measure their heart rate, their internal load, external load. They want to do a sprint, and they don't want me saying, "Oh, on the bungee that felt strong." They want to go.
They'll look better.
What was that, Nick? What's my load? 5.5 kilos. That's giving you a 20% VDEC, which means that we can work on this element of your stride. They want to know that. Was I above or below target? Above target, you hit PB. Super. So that data informed and data and technology enabled piece is really useful. That you've not had before. And I think increasingly the simplicity of to operate the kit, to get squads through, has been super useful for us.
Yeah, the enable piece where, again, how does it support you coaching? Like, you still have to value auto-regulated speed. You still have to decide, well, if we're cooking, let's keep going. If we're not, we're not.
Yeah.
Instead of just like watching him run, you're like, oh, no, you're actually still getting faster. Like, we can keep going. So it just supports kind of what you're doing. All
of the technology that we use on the grass, inside the gym, we use different tech. It's to inform and enable our coaching. It doesn't replace our coaching eye. And this is something that I think is happening with a generation of coaches that are coming through. They're kind of losing their coaching eye. And sometimes we kind of play games like when we're doing jumps or we're lifting with the bar. Yes, so I'll be like, that one there, that was the PB. And what was it? I told you, it was 70 watts per kilo. And it's like, you're not, I'm not saying like I'm some sort of savant, but
there is value in intuition.
If you've watched enough, like, you know what looks good, you know what sounds good. Like when they contact the floor, that was a good contact. I think that's going to be a good RSI there. You know it, and I think the danger for younger practitioners coming through is an over-reliance on technology. So the 1080s is amazing. It's a great bit of kit. I've still got a coach. It's a tool that I use, absolutely. It enables our coaching, it informs our practice, but we don't, like you say, you don't just go, keep going. Yeah, staring at the tablet, going, not looking at the runs, and not listening to the athlete coming back going, I feel a bit heavy on that one, or the computer says keep going. No, exactly. I might look and go, computer says keep going, and I'm seeing maybe not. And equally, they might be saying, I feel tired. I'm like, no, I've seen the way you've just moved there. You've got more in the tank. Let's go. So
I would describe it as like a triangle, and you put it all together. I would watch the athlete run. I would think what I thought. I would guess what how the graph would look. Yeah. And then I would look at that, and then I would like ask them, but also think what would, how are they probably feeling? So the triangle of coach's eye, data, athlete, and you kind of just
you're constantly triangulating those three reference points. You're not just using any one. It's like anything in life, isn't it? When you're trying to find your way home, you're going to triangulate, well, where am I? Where do I need to get to? Can I see the route there? That's all we're trying to do is, use the tools available to us.
That I might be over relying on my phone for that. My parents would be telling me the directions. I'm like, okay, I'll just type in my phone. But anyways, I digress. Last question. We made it. Kind of what's next? So, what do you think that next frontier of soccer development is? So you commented that like not only is speed staying the same, it's actually getting better. So technically, you have to get better to stay average, right? So the next frontier, what are you most curious / interested about? If you had some extra time to dive into something 1080 specific, like what's been super like on your mind? So kind of what's next for Nick, for 1080, for soccer, in your opinion?
So I think the demands of the sport are increasing. So, we see that year on year. So I think there's an increasing recognition that yes, there's a huge energy system component to it. So there's that side, the conditioning side, but it's a strength, power, speed game. Our forwards need to be able to hold the defenders off. They need to be strong into that position. They need to be able to receive the ball and hold it up. So I think there's an increasing understanding that you've got to be fast. What underpins that? Yes, as I said before, you can do speed work, resisted, unresisted. You can do jump-based activities, plyometrics. You can lift. And I think I think we can explore more in that off-feet conditioning, and we can explore more around when we do that. We can take lessons from sports like basketball where they're on the road constantly and they are finding gaps before and after training on the road to lift. We can do that. We've definitely got the ability. It's changing the mindset of the players and the coaches. So I think leaning into strength, power development is a big thing across the sport. The areas that I'm super excited about, which we've not had opportunity to really explore with the players, is, and I know Paul Bryce is going to talk about it with his work with the Dutch track athletes, is that assisted and variable loading. I think that's super cool because we can work on straight line, linear, axel, But when does a player really... So we're working on the raw materials, but if we can then have that kind of stop-go, we're going resisted, I think the variable speed piece is super interesting. I'd like to lean into that more in the next sort of 5-6 years. The change of direction piece, I think, is really interesting with that, understanding the different phases of acceleration, early stage, late stage, how can we work on that? So I think those are areas that I'm keen on. And then really it's for us, which I think we're getting close to, is just 1080s sit within our normal day. We have the cables in the gym, we do certain work on there. We have the sprints within the gym out on the grass. It's just a piece of kit. It becomes as normal to be using that as it is to use any other item of equipment that we have in the facility. So yeah, I think that hopefully answers the question. Mm. If not, we can delve into some other stuff.
Well, we'll see where this takes us. About 1080 specific, like if you had a group of like 5 guys, it's 2 months in off season, 3 months, right? Yeah, they're like gonna do their skill work for an hour, and you get them for an hour for speed and an hour for lift, right? Let's just dream.
Beautiful. Yeah.
What would you? Is it more COD stuff? Is it that like what? How would you write a program with guys, time, and a 1080 just to like learn and experiment? And
I'm going to load velocity profiling to start with, and I'll probably profile them on a change of direction, so 1505, 1005, so we can actually get an idea of what's their acceleration capability like, what's their ability to put the brakes on, and then change direction, and then would build out a program from there. Again, going back to some of the first questions, what's the gap? What's the game? What they're already good at, but where can we start to plug that in? And I'd be referring back to those pieces in terms of like load profiling and really dialing in those sessions so that when we do our 6-8 runs, we know it's at the right lows. We've got our targets that we're hitting. So it's kind of a very general, short answer.
No, it goes back to full circle. Pretty good at this. You should host your own podcast of being even more precise. Yeah. Not only can you load precisely, but you can precisely figure out the strengths, the gaps. Yeah. You know, and because although testing can be super quick, an FVP is just 1 sprint. Yeah. LVP is 3 sprints. A COD would take a little bit more time, but it'll just be super dialed in to support what you're already doing.
I think it's understanding the piece of the jigsaw, and again, the athlete in front of you, and knowing what their preferences are. And we may have an athlete whose preference is really gym-based stuff. They like getting under the bar and lifting. And I can go, okay, well, we see some deficits in your sort of 5 to 10 meter. I don't really want to do more pitch work. Okay, well, we'll shift the focus to the strength. And equally, we might get someone that says, I never do strength work. That's not me. I'll get slow. We won't do any strength work. Let's get you out on the 1080. We'll work you through your velocity
turn up.
You're getting resisted. You're getting a strength stimulus there. Yeah. So I think it's understanding that picture again, the perspectives of the athlete. Look at the data to enable our coaching and pull it all together for the program.
That makes sense to me. So we can break the fourth wall. I'll give you an opportunity to say any closing remarks. But thank you very much for your time and. We'll leave the listeners with something. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I've got nothing else to say other than thank you very much for inviting me on. I'm looking forward to speaking this afternoon at the summit. It's going to be fantastic.
Where can people find you?
I'm terrible at this, but I have got a website, nickgrantham.com, very originally titled. And I think I'm coach_NickG on Instagram. Yeah, it's kind of a mixture of photos of donuts, some training content. It's not a super sort of corporate professional program.
Gotcha. So that'll be on social. That'll be in the caption and stuff. But thank you very much again for your time, and I look forward to your presentation.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
All right.